How can a single careless confession turn my world upside down? What starts as me coming clean about a one-night mistake becomes the day my husband shows he's been quietly gathering every receipt behind my back. Can I still call him the villain when he's the one calmly handing me the papers while everyone's watching? I confessed like I was doing the right thing, expecting tears and maybe forgiveness. He didn't even flinch. He just said he'd known for a long time. That calmness was the scariest part, because it meant he'd already grieved me in silence. After that, every door started closing, and I couldn't talk my way back in. The words tumbled out of my mouth like water from a broken faucet, unstoppable and messy. I'd rehearsed this moment for weeks, standing in front of our bathroom mirror while Caleb showered, practicing the perfect balance of remorse and justification. I was going to be honest, finally, completely honest, and somehow that would make everything better. "Caleb, I need to tell you something," I said, setting down my coffee cup with what I hoped was the right amount of gravity. He was reading the morning paper at our small kitchen table, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up in that way that used to make me smile. Now it just reminded me of how predictable everything had become. He looked up, those steady brown eyes meeting mine without suspicion. God, how had I forgotten how trusting he was, how completely, devastatingly trusting. "It's about that night 3 weeks ago when I went out with the girls from work." I took a breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to say. This was it, the moment I took control of our story again. "Something happened, and I need you to hear it from me." Caleb folded the paper carefully, giving me his full attention. His face was neutral, patient, waiting. "I made a mistake," I continued, the words flowing easier now. "A really stupid mistake. I met someone at Eclipse, that new club downtown, and we ended up spending the night together." I watched his face for the explosion, the tears, the accusations. I was ready for all of it. I had my explanations prepared, my reasons lined up like soldiers ready for battle. How distant he'd been lately, how we barely talked anymore, how I felt invisible in my own marriage, how this wasn't really about the other guy, Theo, but about us, about what we'd lost. But Caleb didn't explode. He didn't cry. He didn't even look surprised. He just nodded slowly and said, "I know." Those two words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" I said, "I know." His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was commenting on the weather. "I've known for a while now." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. "How could you know?" "I never—" "You left your Instagram open on the laptop," he said simply. "The photos from that night were pretty clear, you and some guy dancing, getting close. Then you disappeared from the group for hours." He shrugged. "It wasn't hard to figure out." My mouth opened and closed like a fish. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. I was supposed to be brave, honest, taking control of the situation. He was supposed to be hurt, angry, desperate to save us. Instead, he was sitting there like we were discussing grocery lists. "Why didn't you say anything?" I finally managed. What was there to say? He picked up his coffee, took a sip. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready, or when you thought it would serve your purpose." That last part stung. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, Tilly. It doesn't mean anything." But there was something in his tone, something cold and final that I'd never heard before. I tried to regain my footing. "Look, I know this is hard to hear, but I'm telling you because I want us to work through this. What happened with Theo?" "Theo Mendez," Caleb said quietly. "Events promoter, works with Pinnacle Marketing, lives in that new complex on 5th Street. The blood drained from my face. "How do you—" "Like I said, I've known for a while." He stood up, rinsing his coffee cup in the sink with methodical precision. "I'm going to shower and get ready for work. We can talk more about this later if you want." And just like that, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving me sitting there with my carefully planned confession in ruins around me. I sat in that chair for 20 minutes after I heard the shower start, trying to process what had just happened. This was supposed to be my moment of honesty, my chance to reset our relationship. I was supposed to be the one in control, the one making the brave choice to come clean. Instead, I felt like I'd been playing a game where everyone knew the rules except me. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lydia. "How did it go? You were so brave to tell him. He's lucky to have someone who values honesty." I stared at the message, remembering how I'd called her last night, painting myself as the wife who'd made a mistake, but was woman enough to own it. She'd been so supportive, so proud of me for doing the right thing. Now I didn't know what the right thing was anymore. The shower was still running when I heard Caleb's phone ring in the bedroom. I shouldn't have, but I crept closer to the door, listening. "Yes, this is Caleb Carslake," I heard him say. "The meeting is still on for Thursday." "Good. Yes, I have all the documentation we discussed." "Documentation? Meeting?" My heart started pounding. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. The confession this morning was predictable. The words hit me like ice water. He'd known I was going to confess. He'd been expecting it. When he came out of the bedroom 15 minutes later, dressed for work, I was back in the kitchen pretending to read emails on my phone. "I'll be home late tonight," he said, grabbing his keys. "I have that meeting I mentioned." "What meeting?" I tried to keep my voice casual. "Just work stuff." He paused at the door, looking back at me with those calm, unreadable eyes. "Oh, and Tilly, you might want to think about what you're going to tell people at work. About us, I mean. Things might get complicated." And then he was gone, leaving me alone with questions I was suddenly afraid to have answered. I spent the rest of the morning going through his desk, looking for clues about this mysterious meeting. Most of the drawers were locked. When had he started locking drawers? But I found a receipt tucked behind some old bills. Morrison & Associates Legal Services, consultation fee, $350. Date, March 15th. March 15th was 2 weeks before my confession. 2 weeks before I'd even decided to tell him. My hands were shaking as I put the receipt back exactly where I'd found it. What kind of legal consultation? What kind of documentation? And why did I suddenly feel like I was the only one who didn't know what was coming next? The office felt different that Monday morning, like everyone was looking at me with new eyes. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was the way conversations seemed to stop when I walked by. But something had shifted. I'd spent the weekend trying to process Caleb's reaction, or lack thereof. Every time I brought up us or what happens next, he'd give me that same calm, distant response. "We'll figure it out, Tilly." But he wasn't acting like a man trying to figure anything out. He was acting like a man who'd already figured everything out and was just waiting for me to catch up. "Girl, you look like you haven't slept in days," said Nate Voss, sliding up to my desk with his usual Monday morning coffee gossip. Nate was my closest friend at Morrison Logistics, the kind of guy who always knew which managers were sleeping together and which clients were about to jump ship. "Just some stuff at home," I said, trying to sound casual. "You know how it is." "Actually, I don't." He perched on the edge of my desk, lowering his voice. "But I saw your Instagram stories from Friday night. That club looked amazing. And that guy you were dancing with? Damn, Tilly." My stomach clenched. I'd posted those stories in a moment of rebellious confidence, feeling alive and free for the first time in months. Theo had been charming, attentive, everything Caleb wasn't. The camera had captured us laughing, dancing close, his hand on my waist as we moved to the music. "It was just dancing," I said quickly. "Uh-huh." Nate's grin suggested he wasn't buying it. "Well, whatever it was, it looked like fun. When's the last time Caleb took you dancing?" "Never," I thought. "When's the last time Caleb took me anywhere?" "Things are complicated right now," I said. "They don't have to be." Nate glanced around, then leaned closer. "Look, I'm not saying you should do anything crazy, but you're 34 years old, Tilly. You've got one life. If you're not happy. He left the sentence hanging, but I knew what he meant. I'd been complaining about Caleb for months, how he never wanted to go out, how he came home from work and just sat in front of the TV, how we barely talked about anything deeper than grocery lists and utility bills. I actually told him, I said suddenly. About Friday night. Nate's eyebrows shot up. You told him? Everything? Well, not everything, but enough. I found myself downplaying Caleb's strange reaction. He took it better than I expected. See? I told you he'd understand. The man's not stupid. He knows he's been neglecting you. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. But even as I nodded, I couldn't shake the memory of Caleb's voice. I've known for a while now. That wasn't the voice of a man getting a wake-up call. That was the voice of a man who'd been awake all along. My computer chimed with a new email. The sender made my blood run cold. HR Morrison Logistics. Subject, meeting request, urgent. Ms. Carslake, please report to my office at 2 p.m. today to discuss a matter requiring immediate attention. Please bring your employee handbook. Janet Morrison, Human Resources Director. Shit, I whispered. What's wrong? Nate was reading over my shoulder. Oh, that's not good. Why would HR want to see me? But even as I asked, I was thinking about those Instagram stories, about the photos of me and Theo getting increasingly intimate as the night went on. Maybe it's nothing, Nate said, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe they're just updating policies or something. But we both knew that wasn't true. You didn't get called to HR with instructions to bring your employee handbook for a policy update. I spent the next 4 hours in a state of mounting panic, Googling social media policies and employee conduct guidelines, until my eyes burned. Morrison Logistics had a reputation for being conservative, family-oriented. Most of the senior management had been married to the same people for decades. They didn't look kindly on messy personal lives bleeding into professional spaces. At 2 p.m. sharp, I knocked on Janet Morrison's door. Come in, Ottilia. She never called me Tilly, always used my full name like it was a weapon. Please, sit down. Janet Morrison was a thin, severe woman in her 50s who ran HR like a military operation. She had my Instagram printed out in front of her, multiple photos spread across her desk like evidence at a crime scene. I'm sure you know why you're here, she said without preamble. Actually, I don't. I tried to sound confident, but my voice came out smaller than I'd intended. These photos were brought to my attention by a concerned colleague. She tapped one of the printouts, me and Theo, his hands around my waist, both of us laughing. Photos that clearly identify you as a Morrison Logistics employee engaged in what appears to be inappropriate conduct. I was dancing, I said, at a club, on my own time. You were representing this company. Her voice was ice. Your Instagram profile lists Morrison Logistics as your employer. These photos have been shared, commented on, and discussed by multiple people in our professional network. My heart sank. I'd never thought about who might be following my social media, who might be watching. Furthermore, she continued, there are concerns about the nature of your relationship with this individual and how it might reflect on the company's values and reputation. What concerns? What are you talking about? Janet slid another paper across the desk. It was a printout of comments from the Instagram post, comments I hadn't even seen. Looks like someone's having fun while hubby's at home. Morrison Logistics employees getting wild. Isn't she married? Yikes. That's not dancing, that's foreplay. I felt sick. People can say whatever they want online. That doesn't mean... It means you've created a situation where our company name is being associated with speculation about infidelity and inappropriate behavior. Janet's tone was final. I'm issuing you a formal warning. Any further incidents that bring negative attention to Morrison Logistics will result in immediate termination. She handed me a letter, official, typed, signed. A formal warning that would go in my permanent file. I understand, I said. though I didn't understand anything anymore. I hope you do, Ottilia, because this kind of attention, it has a way of spreading, and once people start talking, it's very difficult to make them stop. I walked back to my desk in a daze, the warning letter burning in my hand. Nate was waiting for me, trying to look casual but failing miserably. "How bad?" he asked. "Formal warning. Someone reported the Instagram posts." "Who would do that?" I looked around the office with new eyes, wondering who among my colleagues had been watching my social media, screenshotting my posts, reporting back to HR. The same people I'd worked with for 3 years, who I'd thought were friends. "I don't know," I said, but I was starting to suspect. That evening, Caleb was late coming home again. When he finally walked through the door at nearly 9 o'clock, I was waiting for him. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About whatever game you're playing." The words came out sharper than I'd intended. "About why HR called me in today. About why someone reported my Instagram post to my boss." Caleb set down his briefcase, loosened his tie. "Someone reported your posts. Don't act surprised. You knew this would happen." "I knew what would happen. You said things might get complicated at work. How did you know that unless you—" I stopped, seeing something in his expression. Not guilt, not surprise, just that same calm assessment. "Unless I what, Tilly? Unless you called them? Unless you're trying to sabotage my job because you're angry about Friday night?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment, hanging up his jacket with methodical precision. "I didn't call your HR department," he said finally, "but I'm not surprised someone did." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means when you post photos of yourself all over a married man at a nightclub with your employer listed in your profile, consequences tend to follow." He turned to face me. "Actions have consequences, Tilly. I thought you understood that. So this is my fault? This is your choice." His voice was maddeningly calm. "You chose to go out. You chose to be with another man. You chose to post about it online. Now you're dealing with the results of those choices." I wanted to scream at him, to make him fight with me, to get some kind of emotional reaction. Instead, he was talking to me like I was a child who'd touched a hot stove and was surprised to get burned. "What about your choices?" I shot back. "What about choosing to ignore your wife for months? What about choosing to come home and sit in front of the TV instead of talking to me? What about choosing to be so damn cold and distant that I felt invisible in my own marriage?" For just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. "You're right," he said quietly. "I made choices too, and now we're both living with the consequences." He walked toward the bedroom, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and Tilly, you might want to check your Instagram. Someone tagged Morrison Logistics in the comments." I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, opening Instagram with a sense of dread. The post from Friday night, the one with me and Theo, had exploded with new comments. Morrison Logistics, your employee is representing you well." Morrison Logistics might want to check their social media policy. This is what Morrison Logistics considers professional behavior. And then I saw it, a comment that made my blood run cold. "Idyllic, 34. Hope it was worth it. Some of us believe marriage still means something." A concerned colleague. A concerned colleague. Someone I worked with. Someone who knew me, who'd been watching, waiting. Someone who'd been talking to my husband. The video went viral on a Tuesday. I didn't even know it existed until Lydia called me at work, her voice tight with concern. "Tilly, you need to see this. Someone posted a video from that night at Eclipse." My hands were shaking as I opened the link she texted me. It was grainy, clearly shot on someone's phone from across the club, but the image was clear enough. Me and Theo, dancing to some pounding bass line, his hands roaming places they shouldn't have been roaming, my body pressed against his like we were the only two people in the world. But it wasn't just the dancing that made my stomach drop. It was what happened at the end of the video. Theo leaning down to whisper something in my ear, me laughing and nodding, the two of us walking toward the exit together, his arm around my waist. The caption read, "When you're married but the party don't stop, what's an eclipse, tan married life an oops." In 18 hours, it had been shared 47 times and had over 200 comments. "Oh God," I whispered. "It gets worse," Lydia said. "Look at the comments." I scrolled down, each comment like a knife in my chest. Trashy behavior. Feel sorry for her husband. This is why I don't trust married women at clubs. Someone should show this to her workplace. Marriage is sacred. This is disgusting. But the worst part wasn't the strangers judging me. It was the comments from people I knew. "Isn't this Tilly from Morrison Logistics? Yikes." Someone from a client company I'd worked with. "Girl, your husband follows my Instagram. He's probably seen this by now." A college acquaintance. "This is messy even for you, T." My own cousin. My phone rang. Janet Morrison from HR. "Ottilia, I need you in my office now." The walk to HR felt like a death march. Other employees looked up as I passed, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed judgment. The video had clearly made its rounds through the office. Janet didn't waste time with pleasantries. "This video has been sent to me by 3 different people," she said, her laptop turned toward me, showing the damning footage. 3 separate employees felt compelled to bring this to my attention. "It's just dancing," I said weakly. "It's a married employee of Morrison Logistics engaging in behavior that reflects poorly on this company's values." Her voice could have frozen water. Behavior that is now being discussed and shared across social media platforms. What people do in their private lives stops being private when it's posted online for the world to see. She closed the laptop with a sharp click. "I'm placing you on administrative leave pending a full review of your conduct." The words hit me like a physical blow. "You can't be serious." 2 weeks, unpaid, during which time you'll have no access to company systems, no contact with clients, and no representation of Morrison Logistics in any capacity. She handed me a letter. "This includes all social media activity." I stared at the letter, the words blurring together. Administrative leave, under investigation, potential termination. "This is insane," I said. "I'm being punished for dancing." "You're being held accountable for your choices." Janet's tone was final. "Just like everyone else." I cleaned out my desk while the entire office watched. Nate tried to approach me, but I waved him off. I couldn't handle his pity right now, couldn't stand to see the mixture of sympathy and judgment in his eyes. My phone buzzed constantly as I drove home. Texts, calls, notifications. The video was spreading beyond just social media now. Someone had created a TikTok with the footage set to a song about cheating wives. It had 10,000 views. When I got home, Caleb was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He looked up when I walked in, taking in my cardboard box of desk belongings. "Administrative leave," I said before he could ask. He nodded like he'd expected it. "I'm sorry that happened." "Are you?" The question came out harsher than I'd intended, because you seem pretty calm for someone whose wife just lost her job. "You didn't lose your job, you're on leave." "Same difference." I set the box down harder than necessary. "And all because someone decided to record me dancing and post it online." "Is that what you think this is about?" Caleb's voice was quiet, but there was something underneath it. Dancing. What else would it be about? He turned his laptop toward me. The video was playing on repeat, and this time I forced myself to really watch it, to see what everyone else was seeing. It wasn't just dancing. It was a married woman, obviously intoxicated, grinding against a stranger while her wedding ring caught the club lights. It was intimate touches, whispered conversations, and a clear exit together that suggested exactly what everyone thought it suggested. "That's not who I am," I said quietly. "But it's who you were that night." Caleb closed the laptop. "And now it's who you are to everyone who sees this video." I sank into a chair across from him, feeling the weight of the day crushing down on me. How did this happen? How did one stupid night turn into this? Because it wasn't just one night, was it? His question was gentle, but it cut deep. What do you mean? I mean the Instagram posts leading up to that night, the complaints about our marriage to your friends, the way you've been pulling away for months. He leaned back in his chair. Friday night was just the culmination. I wanted to argue with him, to tell him he was wrong, but as I sat there, I realized he wasn't. Friday night hadn't been a spontaneous mistake. It had been the end result of months of choices, small rebellions, little acts of defiance, a growing resentment that I'd fed and nurtured until it became something bigger than both of us. So what happens now? I asked. Now you deal with the consequences of your actions. He stood up, gathering his papers. And I deal with the consequences of mine. What's that supposed to mean? But he was already walking away, leaving me alone with my cardboard box and the sound of my phone buzzing with notifications I didn't want to read. That evening, I tried calling my sister for support. Lydia had always been my champion, the one person who understood my side of things. I can't talk long, she said when she picked up. David's family is coming for dinner. Did you see what happened at work? I saw the video, Tilly. Her voice was different, cooler, more distant. Everyone's seen the video. It's not as bad as it looks, isn't it? The question hung in the air between us. Because it looks pretty bad. I thought you understood. I thought you supported me being honest about my feelings. I supported you being honest with your husband. I didn't support you. This, she sighed. Look, I love you, but I can't keep defending choices I don't understand. So you're taking his side now? I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm just tired of pretending that what you did was okay because you were unhappy. The line went quiet for a long moment. I have to go, Lydia said finally. David's parents don't need to hear about this. After she hung up, I sat in my empty apartment. Caleb had gone out somewhere without telling me where, and scrolled through the comments on the video. Each one felt like a judgment, a verdict from a jury I'd never asked to face. But the worst part wasn't the strangers calling me names. It was the silence from the people I'd expected to defend me. My friends, my family, my colleagues, all of them stepping back, creating distance, protecting themselves from the fallout of my choices. I was becoming radioactive, and everyone could see it except me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the video. This is getting out of hand. We should probably not contact each other for a while. Theo. Even Theo was abandoning ship. I typed back, Are you serious right now? No response. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. When I checked his Instagram, I'd been blocked. The man I'd risked everything for had disappeared at the first sign of real consequences, leaving me to face the wreckage alone. That night, I lay in bed listening to Caleb moving around in the guest room. When had he started sleeping in the guest room? And tried to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so fast. 3 days ago, I'd been in control of my narrative. I was the honest wife, the woman brave enough to confess her mistakes and work toward healing. Now I was the star of a viral video, suspended from my job, abandoned by my friends and family, and married to a man who seemed to be documenting my downfall with the detached interest of a scientist studying a specimen. And the scariest part was that I was starting to suspect this was exactly what he'd been waiting for. Ruth Carslake's dining room had always intimidated me, with its formal china and perfectly coordinated table settings that made every meal feel like a performance. But sitting there on Sunday afternoon, with Caleb's entire family watching me like I was a specimen under glass, I felt more exposed than I ever had in my life. The viral video had reached them, of course. In a family of teachers and accountants and small business owners, my public humiliation had become the elephant in the room that everyone was pretending not to see. More potatoes, Ottilia? Ruth asked, her voice carrying that particular tone of politeness that felt like ice water. "I'm fine, thank you." I tried to smile, but my face felt frozen. Caleb's sister Emma was there with her husband and 2 kids, all of them carefully avoiding eye contact with me. His brother Mark had found urgent reasons to help in the kitchen every time conversation lagged. Even 8-year-old Marta, who usually chatted non-stop about school and her friends, was quiet and watchful. "So, Tilly," said Emma's husband Dave, clearly trying to break the tension. "How's work going?" The silence that followed was deafening. "Actually, I'm taking some time off," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "Oh? Vacation?" Ruth's question was sharp enough to cut glass. "Something like that." Caleb reached for the salt, his movement casual but deliberate. "Tilly's on administrative leave," he said calmly. There were some concerns about social media policies. I stared at him, shocked that he'd just thrown me under the bus so casually. But when I looked around the table, I realized everyone already knew. They'd all seen the video, all heard the gossip, all formed their opinions about who I was and what I'd done. "Well," Ruth said, setting down her fork with precision, "I suppose that's what happens when people forget their responsibilities." "Mom," Caleb said quietly. "No, it's fine," I heard myself saying. "I know what everyone thinks of me." "Do you?" Ruth's eyes were steel gray, just like her son's. "Because I'm not sure you understand the impact of your choices on the people who love you." "My choices?" The words came out louder than I'd intended. "What about his choices? What about a husband who comes home every night and acts like I don't exist?" The room went dead silent. Even the kids stopped eating. "Tilly," Caleb's voice carried a warning. "No, I'm tired of being the villain here." I could feel my composure cracking, but I couldn't stop. Everyone wants to judge me for one night, but nobody wants to talk about the months of being ignored, of feeling invisible in my own marriage. Ruth's laugh was bitter. "So you decided to make yourself very visible indeed." "I made a mistake. I admitted it. I tried to fix it." "By posting it all over the internet." Emma spoke for the first time, her voice sharp with disbelief. "By making it everyone's business?" "I didn't post the video. Someone else—" "You gave them the material," Mark said, emerging from the kitchen. "You can't blame other people for recording what you chose to do in public." I looked around the table, seeing the judgment in every face, and something inside me snapped. "You know what? You're right. I made choices. I chose to feel alive for one night instead of slowly dying in a marriage where my husband treats me like furniture." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I chose to be with someone who actually wanted to be with me. "And how did that work out for you?" Ruth's question was quiet, deadly. The truth hit me like a slap. Theo had blocked my number. My job was in jeopardy. My friends were avoiding me. My own sister barely wanted to talk to me. "At least I tried," I said weakly. "You tried to destroy your family," Ruth said, standing as well. "You tried to humiliate my son in front of everyone he knows. You tried to justify selfishness as some kind of liberation. That's exactly what you did." Her voice was final, absolute. "And now you want us to feel sorry for you because there were consequences." Marta started crying, quiet, confused tears that broke my heart. She didn't understand what was happening, only that the adults were angry and her world felt unsafe. "Look what you've done," Emma said, gathering her daughter close. "She doesn't need to see this." "Neither do any of us," Mark added. I looked at Caleb, hoping for some support, some sign that he would defend me, or at least ask his family to back off. Instead, he was watching me with that same calm, analytical expression I'd been seeing for weeks. "Maybe we should go," he said quietly. The ride home was silent except for the sound of my occasional sniffles. I kept waiting for Caleb to say something, to apologize for his family's attack, to acknowledge that they'd been unfair, to show some sign that he was on my side. Instead, he drove with mechanical precision, his face revealing nothing. "Your mother was way out of line," I finally said as we pulled into our apartment complex. Was she? Are you serious? She attacked me in front of everyone. She made me look like... Like what, Tilly? Like I'm some kind of monster. Caleb parked the car and turned off the engine, but made no move to get out. What did you expect? I expected my husband to defend me. Defend what, exactly? His voice was still calm, but there was something underneath it now. Your right to cheat. Your right to humiliate our family publicly. Your right to blame everyone else for your choices. I expected you to love me enough to fight for us. For the first time in weeks, Caleb's composure cracked. Just for a moment, I saw pain flash across his face. Real, raw pain that made my chest ache. I did love you enough, he said quietly. I loved you enough to pretend I didn't see you pulling away. I loved you enough to give you space when you said you needed it. I loved you enough to keep trying even when you stopped trying. Then why didn't you fight for me? Because you can't fight for someone who doesn't want to be fought for. He looked at me directly for the first time all day. And you made it very clear that you didn't want to be married to me anymore. That's not true, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, you did everything possible to end this marriage except actually ask for a divorce. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with truth I wasn't ready to face. So what happens now? I asked. Caleb was quiet for a long moment, staring out the windshield at our apartment building, the place we'd called home for 3 years, where we'd been happy once upon a time. Now you decide what you really want, he said finally, and I decide what I'm willing to accept. That night, I found Caleb in the guest room, packing clothes into a suitcase. Where are you going? My mom's house for a few days. He didn't look up from his packing. I think we both need some space to think. Running away isn't going to solve anything. I'm not running away, I'm protecting myself. From what? He stopped packing and looked at me directly. From watching the woman I married turn into someone I don't recognize. After he left, I sat in our empty apartment and tried to understand how everything had fallen apart so quickly. 2 weeks ago, I'd been in control of my story. I'd been the one making choices, taking action, refusing to be a victim of circumstance. Now I was alone, suspended from my job, estranged from my family, and married to a man who looked at me like I was a stranger. My phone buzzed with a notification. Someone had tagged me in a new post about the video. The comments were getting worse, more personal, more vicious. But buried in the notifications was something that made my blood run cold. A message from a legal firm I'd never heard of. Mrs. Carslake, please contact our office at your earliest convenience regarding a matter of mutual interest. Time sensitive. My hands were shaking as I Googled the firm name. Morrison and Associates, family law specialists, divorce attorneys. The law office was in one of those sleek downtown buildings that screamed money and power. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at the text message that had brought me here. Mrs. Carslake, your husband has retained our services. As a courtesy, we're offering you the opportunity to discuss the matter before formal proceedings begin. Please call to schedule. Formal proceedings. The words made my stomach churn. I'd tried calling Caleb 17 times since getting the message. Every call went straight to voicemail. I'd driven to his mother's house, but Ruth had answered the door with ice in her eyes and told me he didn't want to see me. He's done talking, Ottilia. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to air your dirty laundry for the world to see. So here I was, sitting in a parking garage, about to walk into a meeting I didn't understand with lawyers I couldn't afford. The receptionist was professionally pleasant in that way that made you feel like an inconvenience. Mrs. Carslake, Mr. Morrison will see you now. James Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of calm authority that reminded me uncomfortably of Caleb. His office was all dark wood and leather, designed to intimidate. Thank you for coming in, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive desk. I know this must be difficult. I don't understand what's happening, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why am I here? Your husband retained our services 3 weeks ago to explore his legal options regarding your marriage. 3 weeks ago. Before my confession. Before the video. Before everything fell apart. Legal options? Divorce, Mrs. Carslake. Your husband is filing for divorce. The word hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected, hearing it said out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. He can't just decide that unilaterally. Actually, he can. This is a no-fault state. Either party can file for dissolution of marriage. Morrison opened a thick folder. However, your husband is hoping to resolve this matter amicably, without unnecessary conflict. What does that mean? It means he's prepared to offer you a settlement that avoids the need for a lengthy court battle. Settlement. Like I was a business deal gone wrong. I don't want a settlement. I want to save my marriage. Morrison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pity, maybe, or professional impatience. Mrs. Carslake, I'm going to be direct with you. Your husband has documented evidence of adultery, including social media posts, witness statements, and video evidence that has been widely circulated. In addition, he has financial records showing unexplained expenses, communication records, and testimony from family members regarding the deterioration of your relationship. Each word felt like a nail in a coffin I didn't know was being built. He's been planning this, I whispered. He's been protecting himself, Morrison corrected. And frankly, given the public nature of your indiscretion, he's in a very strong position. Strong position for what? Morrison slid a document across the desk. Custody of your daughter, division of assets, spousal support, or lack thereof. Marta, my heart stopped. He can't take Marta away from me. He's not trying to. He's asking for primary custody with generous visitation rights for you. Given the circumstances and the impact your recent behavior has had on the child's emotional well-being, most judges would consider that quite reasonable. I stared at the papers, the words blurring together. Primary custody, visitation rights, like I was some kind of threat to my own daughter. This is insane. I made one mistake. You made a series of choices that culminated in a very public humiliation of your family, Morrison interrupted. Choices that have been documented and witnessed and shared across social media platforms. Choices that resulted in your suspension from your job and the dissolution of your support network. So I'm being punished for being human? You're facing the consequences of your actions. There's a difference. I wanted to argue, to fight, to make him understand that I wasn't the monster everyone was making me out to be. But sitting in that leather chair, surrounded by legal documents and evidence of my failures, I felt smaller than I ever had in my life. What if I don't agree to this settlement? Morrison's smile was thin, professional. Then we proceed to court. Your husband's evidence becomes part of the public record. The video, the social media posts, the witness statements, all of it gets presented to a judge. And given the strength of his case, you'll likely end up with less than what he's offering now. How much less? Significantly less, and the process will be much more public. More public. I thought about the viral video, the comments, the way people looked at me now. The idea of all of that being dragged through a courtroom, reported in local papers, becoming official record, made me feel sick. I need time to think. Of course, but I should mention, your husband has asked me to inform you that he'll be moving forward with filing the papers tomorrow, regardless of whether you agree to the settlement. Tomorrow? He's been more than patient, Mrs. Carslake. 3 weeks of trying to reach an amicable resolution while you've been dealing with your other issues. Other issues, like my job suspension, my family's rejection, my complete social isolation. Where is he planning to file? Morrison's pause was answer enough. Here, in downtown court. It's the appropriate jurisdiction. Downtown court, where everyone would see, where reporters sometimes waited for interesting cases, where my humiliation would become even more complete and public. I drove home in a daze, the settlement papers burning like fire in my purse. The apartment felt different when I walked in, emptier somehow, even though most of Caleb's things were still there. But when I looked closer, I realized that wasn't true. His important things were gone: his laptop, his files, his favorite books. The things that mattered to him had already been quietly removed, leaving behind only the furniture and belongings that could be easily replaced. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While I'd been complaining about our marriage, he'd been documenting its failure. While I'd been acting out my frustrations, he'd been building a case against me. My phone rang. Lydia. "I heard," she said without preamble. "Heard what?" "About the divorce. Ruth called Mom." Lydia's question cut deeper than judgment. Was Caleb punishing me or protecting Marta? By Thursday, the courthouse turned my marriage into paperwork. I wore my ring like armor, begged for counseling, and watched Caleb stand calm beside his lawyer, already finished with hope. He admitted he'd been documenting for 6 months. Not a trap, protection. 10 minutes of signatures split custody into weekdays and weekends, like our daughter was a schedule. Outside, he said he'd loved me enough to wait for me to choose us, but I kept choosing myself. At home, the texts started. Karma, homewrecker, worse. Then Lydia called with kindness instead of a lecture. I deleted my social accounts and finally felt quiet. Not relief, but the first chance to rebuild